Welcome, everyone. I'm Jen Romano, UXPA 2025 Conference Co-Chair, and I'm excited to be joined today by Anne Josenverta, the 2025 Conference Course Chair, and Ben Sauer. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, nice to be with you both.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to catch up with you this year at the conference. You'll be teaching a pre-conference course. We're excited to talk to you a little bit about that today. But first, why don't we start talking about your career? How did you get started? How did you get to where you are today? What are you up to these days?
Cool. Let me start by saying that I was always a kid who was very hard to pigeonhole. I could equally be found doing weird comedy shows and also writing code and messing around with and breaking my computers, principally my father's, when I was a teen. Well, it goes back a long way, but I ended up doing an English degree at the same time as running a web design company and writing code a long, long time ago. And then I started an agency. And when the agency kind of closed up, I realized that the thing that interested me most was the human side, right? The interface between humans and machines. And by that point, I'd realized, although I could maybe write passable iambic pentameter from my literature degree, I was terrible at writing code. So I kind of needed to stop doing that. And then, of course, UX, or as it was known back then, information architecture. That led me to a freelance career in UX. Then I joined a really amazing company here in Brighton in the UK called ClearLeft, pioneers of usability testing. We democratized the market for usability testing with a tool called Silverback. We started a conference, UX London, and so I was exposed through that part of my career to just amazing UX thinking, really high quality communication, and lots of awesome conference speakers. And I became one because I was part of the company, or the founders of the company just kind of expected everybody to be great facilitators and presenters. And since I left then, I've worked in healthcare. I've done a lot in AI. I've trained people in conversational AI all over the world, including for O'Reilly. I ended up training people at NASA. But more recently, I've been focusing less on machine communication and more on human communication and really trying to help creatives in general be better communicators about the ideas of their work, which is why we're talking today.
Mhm.
Yeah. Were you involved in, I know that UK has always had a very, very strong human-computer interaction community, like HCI
Hmm.
community.
Yeah.
Uh, were you in early days, were you involved in that? Or I still, uh, or
Um,
does it
I
has changed the name?
HCI is something I've been adjacent to. There's a couple of very large universities here. I know some of the people there, but I've never been that academic, always sort of with a more commercial mindset, to be honest. But yeah.
It's so fascinating to hear about different backgrounds and how people came in and even the terminology we use. Like
Mm,
information architecture, you're coming in from there. When I was new to the field, it was still usability. UX still
mm,
wasn't a thing, right? But it was all about
mm.
usability. And like Anna's mentioning, HCI. So it's fun to hear the different backgrounds and even just the terminology we're using when we all got into this now big UX field.
Yeah. And it's
I,
changing like every few years, right? It feels like we're in for another big change right now.
yeah, yeah. It
Um,
it sounds like you were early in AI. Right now, it's a hot topic, and many people are, um, I don't know if we want to say jumping on board, but definitely getting involved and exploring. It's a part of a lot of our work now. You've been in for
Yeah.
a long time. How have you seen that change?
Yeah, it's been super interesting actually. I think when I first used Siri, so I'm gonna say like when that was 2010 or 11, I suddenly started to wonder when is this kind of interaction gonna mean that a screen interaction is redundant? So I started to get very interested in the power of voice and conversational interfaces, which only accelerated, when Alexa and the Amazon Echo came along. Um, I sort of described the journey of AI's
Sorry,
uh,
I don't know that.
it, good timing. Um, I would describe the overall journey of figuring out how to create AI-based experiences, something along the lines of sailing technology. And bear with me when I tell this story. So in the early days of creating conversational interfaces, the engineering and the technology was so early and so nascent that as designers, we had to work really hard around the fact that it wasn't great at recognizing words or it was hard to make it understand us. And we would create kind of fake experiences in many ways. Like it would feel real, but you had to design it in such a way that it was kind of structured and you couldn't just say anything to it. And that, if you like, is like rowing, right? Like in a boat, like early technology, we were rowing all the time, but nobody's invented the sails yet. And then, with the advent of big data, machine learning, and now the transformer model, the wind has blown behind the technology and we don't have to row as much as designers anymore, right? The technology can do a lot of figuring out what somebody is trying to say or an intelligent response or inferring what actions or needs they really have. And so, if you like, designers have to do less kind of boring manual work to make a conversation feel real. But of course, that doesn't take away from trying to figure out what the overall experience should be like or how to communicate affordances, like what can this system do and not do, or how can we gently nudge the user in a productive direction. So those kind of the need for designers in AI is still really strong,
Mhm.
but we're doing less rowing and the wind of technology has sort of taken away a lot of the tasks from us. So we can
Mhm.
focus on the higher level stuff.
Mhm. That's very interesting. I would really kind of like to know your kind of perspective on how different it is to kind of design for the conversational and voice
Hmm.
UI, because as humans, we process visual information differently from the auditory information. So
Hmm.
sometimes I see that people try to like copy what is on a visually on a screen into this conversational model, but
Yes.
it should be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we could talk about the biggest difference, it's really expectation, in my opinion. Humans' expectation of conversing with something else or somebody else is hundreds of thousands of years old in a way. Our expectations around how that works and how intelligent the other agent is, we have very high expectations. Screen-based interactions, our expectations are what, let's say 50, 60 years old, right? And we're also used to those interactions being very highly constrained. Here is a button, not 10 buttons, but here is one button. This is all you can do on this screen, right? And so it's naturally, there's a lot of affordance and a lot of constraint. And you also don't have to remember anything, which is the other problem with conversational interfaces. So particularly if we talk about those early days of AI, our expectations were constantly being messed with because it's presenting itself as an intelligent being, but it actually isn't very intelligent and is highly constrained. And we still see this problem today, right? Where ChatGPT appears intelligent, but frequently makes mistakes. And in fact, now we're taking it so seriously that, we're really relying on it for things that we really shouldn't. And then also there's that other limitation, which is it doesn't have the shared context of a human. It doesn't know, what you were doing yesterday, right? And whereas humans might know a lot more of that sort of environmental context, or even know other people in your household or your place of work. And so it just doesn't share as much context, which is really, if you think about it, apart from the raw problems of reasoning and reliability, the next level of intelligence has to be shared context around our lives, because we implicitly share that with other humans at the moment, and we expect it from who we're talking to.
Fascinating. I agree, and I love that um, that thought about it. It's like a combination of shared context and memory,
Mm.
right? A bit about memory, about what has happened prior.
Mm,
Mm.
But the shared context is important because arguably memory, we could still put a whole bunch of data in and say, here's my journal from yesterday, right? Here's my diary, here's my
Yeah.
calendar. But then that
Yeah.
shared context is one extra layer.
mm, mm,
I actually think that's maybe the reason why designers don't need to be scared at the moment.
mm.
And in one sense, because yes, with a prompt, a product like, Lovable, one of these new products, can design something, right? But here's the thing it cannot do. It cannot go and gather all the context that you gather,
Mm,
right? It can't go and talk to all the different people in your organization or talk to users. A huge amount of our work is gathering context. And
mm,
while a promptable AI tool could design something for maybe like a solo designer,
mm,
developer,
mm,
it simply cannot go and have all those conversations with everybody in your organization to decide what is the right thing to proceed
Mhm.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben, what advice do you have for people who are exploring UX career options right now? We have a lot of people on the market, a lot of people in flux. You've been around for a long time. What do you
Mm.
recommend for these folks?
Yeah, I think the long view, having that long-term career is interesting in the sense that I'm a designer saw, you know, like
Uh-huh.
the older I get, the harder it is to change and the more grumpy I get, right? That's pretty typical for somebody who's been around. But at the same time, I think I'm a bit more zen about these changes, right? Because you've just seen these transformations in these new industries happen over and over again, and you realize that change is the only constant. So if you were to come to me as a young designer, and I coach lots of these folks often, I would say just be really open-minded about what is next. These tools, that these technologies are changing what we're doing, and it may feel scary, but that's actually the constant since the internet arrived in the 90s, right? At first I was like, didn't even know that I was designing things, creating web pages in like 1995, right? And then we started coding backends, and it just constantly shifted. It felt like it settled down there for a few years, but actually we were just waiting for another shift. So always be learning. Don't limit yourself. Don't put borders around what you do and don't do, right? We have to be open-minded to the fact that we might be kind of vibe coding or whatever the buzzword is, right? Fairly soon, building prototypes, expanding our skills, and I think staying really comfortable with that change and being flexible is probably the thing we need to do the most.
What about for people who are switching careers? We see, at least in US, we see a lot of people switching to UX from
Mm,
academia, from various different kind of
mm,
fields. I have some colleagues who have background in biology
mm,
and stuff like that. So, uh, what do you think? Like, what would you advise to
mm.
them when they come to this multifaceted field?
I think this is going to be a very self-serving answer. Apologies in advance. But I think there are craft skills that have fairly linear paths to acquire, in the sense that most of our work happens, in Figma, right? The artifacts, the creation of artifacts, right, is often now in Figma. And I think I wouldn't really call myself a particularly great UI person, but the path to getting better at that is fairly well understood, and you can just follow that path. I think lots of the other skills, influence, people skills, uh, being business savvy, those are harder things to acquire. And they have, for me, in the past, less linear paths. So, in a way, treat the kind of technical parts of UX, right? Learning what a good interface is and how to interview a user or, whatever those fundamentals are, as kind of a given, like build those, but really start investing in the other areas. And the reason I say this is a self-serving answer is that I'm teaching people to be influential communicators in my workshop. So invest in some of those things. So if we talk about like academia, in my experience, even though academics are teaching, they haven't got a great reputation for being great communicators because they love the details, they love to focus on that. So if an academic was coming in, I'd be saying like, I want you to really practice being an awesome communicator and learning how to not like deluge people with details, because that's the tendency that you see. Yeah.
Maybe this is a
Yeah,
good time to
awesome.
transition into the conference and the course you'll be teaching there. So the UXPA conference, User Experience Professionals Association, we have our annual conference this year, June 16th to 19th in Amsterdam. And with the pre-conference courses on June 16th, your course is called The Storytelling Bridge: Turn Confusion into Clarity by Telling Tales. Great title. Tell us a bit about the course, how this came to be, what it's about, who it's for.
Sure. So I mentioned the company Clearleft earlier, where I used to work, and the standard of communication there was absurdly high. Everybody was a great speaker. We were really great at pitching and explaining things to our clients who were leading the way, writing books, writing articles, running conferences. And when I left Clearleft, I realized fairly quickly that so many other organizations did not share the value of really strong communication. And around the pandemic time, I was thinking of writing a book, and I realized that one of the most practical things I wanted to write was just here are some great habits and shortcuts to being a much better presenter and communicator. And I put them all into this book, Death by Screens: How to Present High Stakes Digital Design Work and Live to Tell the Tale. And a lot of it is about just the content, how to structure a relatively good story about your work. If we imagine the scenario of presenting to your bosses or your colleagues. And after having written a book, I decided to take some of the kind of key lessons and methods in my book and turn those into a workshop. And what I'm going to be teaching on that half day in the Storytelling Bridge is really imagining the scenario that you've got a bunch of stuff that you need to present, but you need to figure out kind of how to turn that into a story or how to start with the story about the work, because that's often, the most powerful ways that a great talk opens, or even movies and stories do that. They'll set the scene with an attention grabber, or sometimes called a hook. And so really what I'm teaching on that day is like how you do that. Like you've got a thing, it's an interface, a feature, or a website, whatever it is that you've created. How on earth do you find a story to tell about it that's not just kind of the thing we default to, which is a series of screens or process, right? That's one of the other things you see most often is people default to process. I did this, 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 this. And frankly, that's kind of what sends stakeholders to sleep quite often. So that search, like what is a good story, how to find it, that's what I'm teaching on the day.
Awesome. Do you think, who is this for? Is this for junior level, senior level, research, design? Is it for everybody? I have an idea, but I'd like to hear from you who you've designed it for.
Thanks. When I wrote the book, I imagined it for more junior designers. However, one of the big surprises of running this workshop is that lots of quite design mature teams have really enjoyed it as well. So it sounds kind of vague to say it's for everyone, but honestly, it kind of is. Everybody is implicitly selling their ideas occasionally, whether you're a content person, a user researcher, a junior designer, a senior designer, a leader. There's always some idea that you are pitching, whether that's high stakes, low stakes. And so I think the reason that people responded well to it, it was completely oversubscribed 2 days in a row at UX London. It was 10 out of 10 at Push UX in 2023. I think the reason that people have responded to it so well is that I spent a lot of time thinking about kind of how to skip the theory of this stuff, because when you often try to learn about storytelling and communication, you hear about the hero's journey, you hear a lot of stuff about the
Mm.
backgrounds, and we're UX people. We love big meta thinking, right? That's our habit. We love this stuff. I tried to cut most of that out. I really did. I was like, what is the most practical way to get from A to Z and skip a lot of the reading and the thinking that you need to do in the middle? And that's why people have really enjoyed the workshop.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking it's for everybody too, because most, well, many, let's say, maybe most, a lot of people are just really bad at the storytelling. You could be an amazing researcher, an amazing designer at all sorts of levels. I mean, how many times do we see a super high level person speaking, at our organization or on television or whatever, and it's just like horrendous, So
Mm,
Yeah.
those things that even if you are good at, you can always improve,
mm,
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
mm,
excited about this. I think in my coaching experience, when I've managed teams at some of these big tech companies, it's like that thing that takes people to the next level. It's like really learning
mm,
how to craft the story and the business
mm,
acumen, which you spoke about
mm,
earlier. So it's
mm,
like getting
Yeah.
better at business, getting better at speaking and doing business in this way, not just like the actual craft we have, I think is so
mm,
crucial for all of
mm.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
in a way, it's kind of a tragedy that organizations mistake the quality of your presentation and the confidence with which you present it as a proxy for the value of the idea,
Mm,
right?
Yeah,
mm,
It kind of sucks because, as we all know, many of us in design are introverted, we lack confidence, but that has nothing to do with the quality of our ideas.
mm,
yeah,
And
mm.
I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the reality. So I'd love to help people get better at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's similar to like what you often hear that the uh, attractive people are perceived to be more qualified
Yeah,
than those
Yeah,
who lack the certain qualities. So
yeah.
nothing to
absolutely
do
true.
with your performance.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. It's like the attractiveness of
Mm.
your verbalizations, right?
Yeah.
Similar thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited about that. Um, Tell us about things you're excited about this year for UXPA 2025. What are you most looking forward to?
I think honestly, the reason I'm switching to being an author, presenter, trainer is that this is my favorite part of the job. I love meeting awesome new folks in our community around the world, learning what they're up to, and just having fun and socializing with those folks. I will also say my family is mostly Dutch. My father is from Amsterdam, so I have family in Amsterdam. I love being there. It's such an awesome city too, and I actually don't know that many people in that part of the world in design. So again, another reason why it's going to be really awesome to meet people there.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, well, we've got a great group who are presenting teaching the courses and also presenting throughout the 3 full days. We've got great attendees. It's always a fun event. So I look forward to meeting you there in person, Ben, and I look forward to seeing you again, Anne, and we're gonna have a great time in Amsterdam in just a few short months. How can people find you, Ben? Obviously at the conference. How else can they find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. I mostly post my nonsense on LinkedIn, so do add me on LinkedIn. It's Ben Sauer, that's Sauer. This is my book, Death by Screens. It's quite easy to find on Amazon, and I have a mailing list on which I keep everyone up to date on my website with workshops I'm running. I'm running free things this week, so do join my mailing list if you want to know more about how to be a better strategic storyteller.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Thanks for spending your time with us today, and we'll
Okay.
see you very soon in Amsterdam.
Looking forward to meeting you both and
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.